بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
إذا وقعت الواقعة ليس لوقعتها كاذبة خافضة
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى يوم الدين. We're going over Surah Al-Waqia, the surah that is mentioned that if a person recites will not be considered of the ghafilin. So we are in verse 63 and 66. This is the lesson 14 that we're going to go over today. And we're saying that in general, according to Tafsir Namuna, it mentions that there are 7 proofs that God gives that why the hereafter or al-ma'ad exists. Because of the doubts and some of the statements from the polytheists saying that God is unable, God cannot have the power or capability to reproduce life again. Quran answers it according to this tafsir. And now we're in the 4th proof. So this is the proof that we're mentioning here. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أفرأيتم ما تحرثون. Have you seen that seed which you sow? So we have to learn about this word harth. What does harth mean? تحرثون. أأنتم تزرعونه أم نحن الزارعون. Is it you who makes it grow, or are we the grower? So when you look at these verses, and it's actually very important during the time period that we live in now, where we like to attribute all action to ourselves. We like to attribute everything to, for example, farming and, the type of, the way that we plant, fertilizer, the machinery we have, the soil, everything we think is in our hands, the weather. But when you look at these verses in Holy Quran, Allah reminds us that He is all capable, that He has all power, and that we sow the seeds, but the true zara, the person that grows, or not the person, but the being that grows, is Allah. He makes those things grow in this world. So as you can see in the photo here, those that are watching, you see that our job and our responsibility in the world is to make sure that we have knowledge and that we try our best. But if that harvest is not fruitful that year, and if that harvest goes into ruin, that is not up to us. So it is a very clear and very close example for us that every day that we need, Allah is going to give 3 examples of 3 things that we need. One of them is food. And our food, if we don't eat, I'm sure if you just don't have one meal, you see how bad you start feeling. So our food that comes relies on harvest. And that harvest relies on Allah. So for the polytheists that are saying that, look, the day of judgment, Allah cannot, have power to give life again. Well, the answer is, if you keep looking at this world, there's signs, and you see that you're planting yourselves. Every civilization is planting something to eat. And when that harvest comes and is fruitful, then you see that and the question is, who gives that ability from that seed, for example, to later on, become a stem and have, roots and a stem and then leaves, and then causes, that photosynthesis, you could say, from sunlight, needing carbon dioxide, this whole process for it to be able to grow. One of the scholars of science was saying that if photosynthesis didn't work for like 2 days, he was actually an expert at this. He told other professors, he says, photosynthesis didn't work for 2 days, the entire world would be doomed. And he said that to them and they agreed. So if you really look at it, this power of the seed coming into a plant, Allah attributes this to Himself. And sometimes, somebody that is far away from religion, someone that is far away from God, they will question this. They'll say, how? But you haven't understood God. You haven't understood that everything in this world goes back, all the power and everything from any attribute, any action that happens in this world, it all goes back to Allah. And this is called at-tawheed al-af'al, or af'ali, that all actions go back to God. Everything that is happening and all that power belongs to God. So let's look at Tafsir al-Mizan. In the previous set of verses, the Quran called the idolaters' attention in the way in which they were created, and the fact that God had ordained death amongst them as a stepping stone towards resurrection and the divine recompense of their deeds, all of which falls within the purview of God's lordship. Following on from this, the present verses enumerate 3 of the most important factors of their worldly lives. O mushrikeen, look how Allah controls your agriculture. First is agriculture, and look at the power He has for you to be able to eat and consume, from which they obtain sustenance for themselves. So one is agriculture. Then later on, hopefully next week, we'll talk about water and drink, that God gives drink. And third is fire, which they use to keep warm and to meet many of their needs. All of this demonstrates God's lordship over them. For lordship is nothing less than the governance of the material realm. So a person that is a muwahhid looks at life differently than a person that is not a muwahhid. And when we look at these verses of Quran, we think and we ponder about these verses and we say that, look, we do our responsibility, we do our taklif, we do our obligation. The result of it is up to God. The result of it is up to God. If we are successful, if we are victorious, that is up to Allah. Because He not only is powerful, but He also has knowledge and wisdom. So He knows what is good for us, what is good for the entire world. He knows, for example, the effect that it might have on someone else or on you. Altogether, He's looking for the best outcome. And the third is He is the most merciful. So why would we, doubt, and why would we, cause ourselves to be materialist and think that the only effective agents in this world is God? Now the question, when you talk about Tawheed al-Af'al, and you think about this type of Tawheed, it means that all actions go back to God. Does this mean that I don't have free will? No, this does not negate free will. I do have free will. Right now I'm moving my hand, for example. Look at me, I'm moving my hand. Or you can move your hand right now, or decide not to move your hand. You can turn on your webcam or turn off your webcam. You really believe you have free will. But who has given you that ability? Who has given you free will? Who has given you life? Who has given you power? And the ability to move my hand like this, all these other things vertically need to be in place for me to have this power. So there's no way I can say I'm independently powerful. I am in complete need. And my action is nothing else but being engulfed in God's action. That God, second by second, is giving me existence, and God, second by second and millisecond, is giving me permission to act. So I can look at my action, not opposed to God's action, where they would contradict each other, either me or God. Whose action is this? I would look at it in a vertical hierarchy, meaning that God, for example, the power of God, and then I'm lower, in a closer agent to that action. And that my action is nothing but being engulfed in the power of God. So therefore, when I act, God is acting. We're both agents, but everything I have is from God. And every power that I have is from Him. So this solves that issue of Tawheed al-Af'al, meaning that Muslims really have to believe that everything in this world happens by God. And that even if I pick up a cup that I have right here, for example, I pick up this cup and I say that God did not will this, God did not do this, then in reality, or God has not allowed this, reality I have performed shirk and polytheism. I have thought that there is another effective force in this universe. There's only one effective force, and that is God. But He is allowing me and giving me that power and capability. But if He wanted to stop it and not to give me free will, that millisecond I wouldn't have it. But He allows me to do things because this is my test. This is how He has created me, so that I can reach the best outcome for myself. Because if every time if I tried to sin and God wouldn't allow me to sin, He could have done that. Every time I come to eat, so for example, haram food or not pray or something like that, then that wouldn't be a test for me. So God gives me ability and gives me freedom to choose. But that doesn't mean that He has left this world. It doesn't mean that He is not effective. It doesn't mean that you're making Him less of a God. We said a vertical hierarchy. So when you think of a vertical hierarchy, that power of God, and I am an agent in the bottom. And I am closer to that, yes, but all my power is engulfed in God's power. So let's go to the next slide. أَفَرَأَيْتُمْ مَا تَحْرُثُونَ. So we said that. So let's go to some of the vocabulary words. One is harth. You probably heard this word. Harth here means to sow. And tahruthun comes from harth, to sow. Then we have this another word which is from zara'a, tazra'un. And that means to grow. So two words here. One is to sow, as you see in this picture here. This person is sowing. The other means to actually grow. So which one of these two do? We only plant. We plant and put the conditions right, and for the plant to grow or not, that is up to Allah. So here it says, أَأَنْتُمْ أَفَرَأَيْتُمْ مَا تَحْرُثُونَ. And have you seen that seed which you sow it? أَأَنْتُمْ تَزْرَعُونَهُ أَمْ نَحْنُ زَارِعُونَ. Is it you who makes it grow, or are we the growers? Either we, like Allah, the angels, or the factors, or we talking about is God Himself respectfully. But who is the one that is causing this to grow? There's a tradition from the Prophet in Majmu' al-Bayan. He says, لا يقولن أحدكم زرعت. None of you should say, I have caused to grow. Don't say زرعت, I have farmed, or I have caused to grow. وَلْيَقُلْ, say حَرَثْتُ. Say that I have planted, that I have sowed. فَإِنَّ الزَّارِعْ هُوَ اللَّهُ. Allah is the Zari. So this is instructions from our Prophet to say that, look, you are not doing anything in reality. You are just sowing. And if you really think of this concept in your own lives, and I really want you to think, when you are doing things in the world, we might have engineers here, workers, construction workers, or people in healthcare, whatever you do. You never say that, for example, if I'm in medicine, I never say I am the one that healed. I have just put the conditions, but what can I say? That Allah is the true Shafi. He is the one that gives shafa. This is a mawahid way to look at life. Once a group of scholars were around Sahib Kifaya, one of our great ulama, and he is the author of Kifayatul Usul, Marhum Akhun Khurasani. And they were in a very poor situation in Najaf, and they needed money. And students, their income, because they're students, relies on the hawza, relies on khums. So as students, or some of it, or a majority of it at least, so a person comes to visit Sahib Kifaya, and he takes with him a sayyid, for example, and he comes and says something in the, together to pay khums. When that person pays his khums or whatever, that scholar tells him that also, this person that paid khums, I also am in need. I brought this person to pay his khums, but I'm also in need. I have, for example, 2 sons that need to get married, and I need money for them. And Sayyid Kafai had him write, on a piece of paper, like, how much do you need? And he wrote him an insignificant amount, and he got upset. And he gave him, gave him much more. Basically, gave him either majority or almost all of that money that he had brought in for khums. And he left. So a person brought in a businessman, a trader, to pay their khums. And then he says, you know what, I also have a lot of need, maybe a sayyid. So he took maybe Sahm Imam and Sahm Sadat, he was in need. So Sahib Kifai gave the majority of all of it to him. Then the students were just wondering what to say to this marja taqleed, because they needed money too. And they were happy that first, when that person came in with the homes, that okay, right now in front of us, maybe he would distribute some of it and give some of it to us. And, finally one of them spoke out and said to his teacher that, look, how come, this happened? And he said, what happened? He said, how come you gave all the homes to him? How come, for us, or if it's not for us, for yourself, teacher, you are living in poverty. You are living in a very difficult position. Why did you give it all away? There Sahib Kifaya comes and starts to cry and is upset. They thought that the students, disrespected their teacher. So they thought that, no, it's okay, sorry about that. He said, no, I'm not crying for that, for thinking that you disrespected me. He says, I'm crying that the first thing in the hawza, or the first thing in Islamic knowledge, deen ma'rifatu, the first part of knowledge, the first part of religion is knowing God. And I am sad that you have not come to know God, because He is the provider, He is the raziq. And that after studying with me, say for example, so many years, you don't understand that rizq is from God, that giving money and providing is from Allah, that lordship is from Allah. So he began to cry that his students didn't reach Tawheed, and that they were asking him. That Sayyid Kafai had reached such a high level that he thought that this money, that if it comes in, he has to give it to this person, he's in need, but Allah will take care of us, the students. And he said that, look, when I came, and I believe that Sayyid Kafaya, he came from, I think, Afghanistan. He came from a far away. I know he's Afghanistani, but I don't know if he was raised there, and I have a feeling that he came from there. He says, when I came, I didn't have much. But Allah has taken care of me, has given me honor, has given me knowledge, has provided for me so far. And I'm very good off, don't worry about me. But he wanted to stress the fact that his students should be a muwahhid, should be a monotheist, and that they should truly believe and trust in Allah, because that's one of the effects. If you really believe that all actions in this world are for a purpose, and all of them come from God, then in reality you will trust Allah. It causes you to have tawakkul. And then you trust Him. It says, I have never starved, or if I've starved, I've survived so many years. Allah will take care of me. So you have tawakkul. One, you rely on God. Two, when you believe that the only effective force in this world is God, then, as our scholars say, that leads you to Tawheed al-Ubudiyat, meaning that you should only worship God then. Because if He is the only one that has power, then why would you worship someone else? Why would you follow someone else? You only should worship God. You only should do ita'at and obey God because He is effective in this universe. So this for us is a great story, is a great example in a way to disprove the beliefs of those that say that there is no hereafter because God cannot do it again, cannot create again, by saying that, look, life comes in front of you every day. You sow, but every day you see in front of you, life is given to this. And a plant comes, and your sustenance is based off this. Let's go to verse 65. لو نشاء لجعلناه حطاما فظلتم تفكهون. If He willed, He would have made it dry debris, and you would remain in wonder. So we have a few words here. One is hutaman. When you look at hutam, which comes from hatma, it means the breaking of something. So in this way you could say dried up, something like bones, like dry bones, something dried up. Dried up, for example, plants, as you can see in this picture, these are hutam. If you can look at this picture, these are hutam. The other word is tafakkahun, which comes from fakiha, which means fruit. And fukaha means also a joke or happiness also. And so therefore we see that when it looks that this way, it causes ta'ajjub. It means tafakkahun here means ta'ajjub, wonder. Fukaha or also can mean fakiha, happiness. For example, wonder. So therefore you see that if God willed, and this happens, I don't know if here we have any farmers, but these farming, it's actually something that farmers themselves say. It's not up to us. Sometimes they have a good year, sometimes they have a bad year, but it is up to Allah. Yes, again, we're not negating free will. You try your hardest, you have the science behind it, the knowledge, but the rest is up to Allah. Inna la mughramun, they say, and if we had caused loss for them, they would say, indeed we have suffered loss. Inna la mughramun. No gharam here, or to loss. So we would have suffered loss. Bal nahnu mahrumun. Now we are deprived. So there's no contradiction. Let's actually read here. Have you considered what you sow, tahruthun? The verb, tahruthun means to plow, or we talked about this in other words. Okay, we talked about all of that. Let's talk about this part. There's no contradiction between negating the act of growing these crops from them and ascribing this to God and the role of natural causes playing in fostering the growth of the crops. So now what if somebody says, well, nature is doing this? What are you saying that Allah is doing this? As these causes do play a role but are ultimately dependent upon God. Yes, there are natural causes. Yes, it needs water, it needs CO2, it needs sunlight, all of that. But all of this is still, we say, because this world, we don't believe that God created this world and this world can exist without God. Like, for example, an engineer builds a building and then leaves it and says, okay, a contractor builds it and then lets the building go. We are like, the creation is like, I gave this example before, like if you make something in your mind right now. For example, let's make a chair. For example, a chair in your mind. And as long as you're thinking of this chair, as long as you're paying attention to it, it exists. But you need to keep paying attention to it. You need to keep supplementing it existence. You need to keep giving it existence in your mind, and this chair exists. Some scholars say this is the way that we can describe the creation compared to God. That second by second, God is giving us creation. Millisecond by millisecond, He is refreshing our existence. So therefore, all of the effects that are happening in this world, Allah needs to do that. Because He is wajibul wujud, He has no need. But all these things are in deep poverty And they're yelling as if they're telling themselves, I'm in need, I'm in need, I'm in need. Everything that is mumkin, everything that is possible, everything that is in contingent existence is just telling you, I'm in need, I'm in need. But how does that need get removed? By Al-Ghaniyul Hamid, by Allah who has no need. So there's no contradiction, we said, to this, but are ultimately dependent upon God in this. They do not exist separately or operate independently, because again, that would be polytheism and shirk. In fact, they are manifestations of His blessings to mankind, and these are manifestations of Allah's rahmah. The same is true of the causes that lie between, these causes. The entire chain of cause and effect is dependent upon God. This entire chain that we said that it needs, for example, soil, and needs space, it needs carbon dioxide, it needs sunlight. All of this depends on Allah, for He is the Lord, the ultimate. And then we go here. From this, it becomes evident that when God says, we have ordained death among you, this means that death is truly part of His plan. Okay, so anyway, بل نحن, actually this is from, I think, the last lesson. Never mind about that. إنا لمغرمون بل نحن محرومون. So what can we take from this lesson today is that when we see that Allah very clearly, and you read this surah at night time or whatever, and you just read this part, أَفَرَأَيْتُمْ مَا تَحْرُثُونَ أَأَنْتُمْ تَزْرَعُونَهُ أَمْ نَحْنُ زَارِعُونَ. And Allah is saying, are you the one that causes these plants to grow, or do I cause it to grow? You see that in our life, in the tawfiq that is needed. Tawfiq means in order for things to be successful, we need Allah. We try our hardest and best in life, but it's important for us to know that that result is up to Allah. So all of you from now on, and I'm sure you're like this, but we try to increase it more, and we say that everything that happens, all this tawfiq and things realizing their success, becoming successful, all of this depends on Allah. So therefore, we have two responsibilities. We have that conventional material responsibility that's based on our free will to plan and to be mindful and to be logical, right? And the other part is we need that tawfiq min Allah. We need that success that Allah gives it, that success that takes that harvest, it makes it, it gives it tawfiq, and it allows it to become a vast, for example, harvest, and allows it to grow, compared to being hutam and dried up, plants. So we also have spiritual factors in our lives. We have physical, material, and spiritual factors that are needed. That's why the mu'min works the hardest, plans the best, is the most organized, but at the same prays the most, and never thinks that now that I have the best plan, now I have the best employees, now I have the best marketing strategy, I'm going to get success. No. Every businessman will tell you that at the end, Allah gave me success, because there's others that did it better, were smarter, had more capital, and they failed. So Allah, that tawfiq is from God. And that is how muwahhid looks at life. He does his responsibilities, but everything that is happening, every action, he views that God is doing this. God gives me a child. That is from God. I cannot give life to someone else, someone that is married and has everything they do. Some people, they don't have children. Some people they work really hard, but they never get anywhere materially. But maybe Allah wants them to be in that stage. Maybe this is His test, and maybe some person doesn't really work too hard and gets super rich. So that would cause us not to be jealous of one another. This would cause us to submit, for example. So therefore, when you live your life as a muwahhid, when you live your life in a way that every day you're looking that God is doing everything, I'm working hard, but everything is from God, you have a very good connection with God. And you try to read signs that something happens to your life, something that these are warnings for you, this is communication, these are blessings. You see good things, you say, God has given me these blessings. You don't say, I have given these blessings to myself, just like this harvest. And if you see something bad happen to you, you see, well, maybe it's time for me to wake up. Maybe this wasn't good, this path I'm going. So you won't be jealous of one another. You won't compete with one another when it comes to the material. You say, this is my rizq and provision. I will try hardest because Allah wants me to give provisions for my family. Allah wants me to work. Actually mentions that working itself in some of the traditions, it says that it removes sins. It's a worship. But that mentality is what's important, that a muwahhid really views that everything is from God. And I want you to try this till next week. Try to pay more attention to the events around you, your personal life. And if you wake up, for example, for Salatul Layl, if you make this dua, say, Allah gave me that tawfiq. It wasn't just me waking up early or planning for it. Allah gave me this tawfiq. Then you'll thank Him more. And when you become successful in your work or in your school, you will pay attention that Allah granted me this tawfiq, because there has to be a difference between the materialist and the muwahhid, the monotheist. May Allah inshallah make us of those that are true monotheists, and may expedite the return of the Imam of the age, inshallah. Give peace and give protection to all the oppressed, especially those in Gaza. And may Allah help those that are helping to remove oppression, inshallah. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ahli bayti at-tayyibin at-tahirin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
الرحمن الرحيم.
إذا وقعت الواقعة ليس لوقعتها كاذبة خافضة